Welcome, dear listener, to a journey across the endless horizon of the sea. Tonight, we step into a world where myths breathe softly with the waves. The ocean has always called to humankind, vast, mysterious, and full of secrets. Its voice is both gentle and thunderous, whispering lullabies and roaring warnings. Long before maps and compasses, sailors trusted in something greater than themselves. They looked to the sky, the stars, and the gods who watched over the waters. Among them stood one guardian, powerful and eternal: Poseidon, lord of the sea. He was not just a figure of fear, but also of guidance, strength, and protection. To the ancient sailor, his presence was felt in every ripple and every calm tide. When the winds howled, prayers rose, carried by salt air and trembling hands. When the waters glistened under moonlight, gratitude filled the silent decks. Poseidon was there, unseen but near, shaping journeys with his unseen trident. He was the keeper of harbors, the guide through storms, the companion in solitude. And so tonight, we follow his story, not in thunder or wrath, but in reverence. This is the tale of Poseidon, guardian of sailors, and the eternal bond with the sea. The sea stretches far beyond the reach of the eye, endless and unbroken, a canvas of shifting blue. It has always been there, before kingdoms rose, before walls were built, before stories were told. The ocean breathes in tides, slow and patient, pulling away and returning with eternal rhythm. To watch the sea is to feel time itself, moving steadily, never pausing, always alive. For ancient people, the ocean was both a friend and a mystery, a giver of life and a keeper of secrets. Its waters carried fish to their nets, salt to their tables, and pathways to distant lands. Yet those same waters could vanish in storms, swallowing boats, erasing trails, and silencing voices. This dual nature made the sea sacred, a place of reverence and respect, feared and loved alike. Sailors, perhaps more than anyone else, understood this paradox with their entire being. Each voyage began with hope, but was shadowed by uncertainty, as no one truly ruled the sea. Every wave was a question, every breeze a message, and every calm a gift to be cherished. They called the ocean eternal, yet it changed with the passing hours, gentle by dawn, fierce by dusk. No harbor could fully shield them from its moods, and no anchor could bind its endless flow. Still, they returned again and again, for the sea was not only danger, but also destiny. It was a highway to new lands, a cradle of discovery, and a mirror of human courage. The ocean connected islands, nations, and hearts, weaving threads of trade, culture, and faith. Without it, the world would have remained small, closed and silent, untouched by distant wonders. But with it came journeys, encounters, and the birth of legends that endure even now. Among those legends, the sea was not seen as empty water, but as a living presence. It was a spirit with moods, a voice with echoes, a power that touched all who entered. The waves were not random. They were whispers, sometimes soft, sometimes stern, always alive. For sailors, the sea was a teacher, shaping them through patience, humility, and courage. It reminded them that strength was nothing without respect, and skill meant little without trust. Trust in the waters, trust in the stars, and trust in the guardian who ruled them all. For at the heart of every voyage lay faith, faith that the sea could be crossed, survived, and returned from. They sang songs to the ocean, not to command it, but to honor its vast embrace. They lit fires on the shore, their glow reaching out like prayers into the rolling dark. Children grew up with tales of the waves, learning early that the sea was never ordinary. It was not just salt and water, it was destiny, infinite and intimate at the same time. To step onto a boat was to surrender to its will, yet also to find freedom in its depth. The sea shaped cultures, inspired poetry, and carved stories into the memory of humankind. Its eternal presence gave birth to gods, guardians, and myths, woven into the rhythm of waves. Before Poseidon's name was spoken, before temples rose, the sea was already sacred. But with Poseidon, it gained a voice, a face, a protector who could bridge man and ocean. And so, the eternal sea became more than an element. It became a realm with a guardian who watched, listened, and stood between sailors and the endless unknown. Thus, the ocean was never just water, but a kingdom alive, vast and endlessly calling. For those who dared to sail it, the sea was both beginning and ending, story and silence. It was eternal, and it would always remain. In the beginning, when the cosmos was still young, the great gods divided the world among themselves. The sky was given to Zeus, radiant and vast, filled with clouds, thunder, and the light of heaven. The underworld fell to Hades, silent and hidden, a realm beneath shadows, far from mortal sight. And the sea, boundless and eternal, was granted to Poseidon, second son of Cronus and Rhea. From that moment, his name was carried by the waves, sung in whispers across salt and foam. He rose not as a conqueror, but as a sovereign, tied forever to the restless heartbeat of the ocean. Poseidon was not alone in his lineage. He stood among Olympians, brothers and sisters of legend. Yet his bond with the sea set him apart, giving him both power and solitude in equal measure. His palace, said to lie beneath the waters, shimmered with coral halls and floors of pearl. Its walls glowed with light drawn from the depths, a realm of beauty hidden from mortal eyes. Here the god of the sea held counsel with spirits of rivers, streams, and ancient springs. From every corner of the world, the waters bowed to him, carrying their whispers to his throne. But Poseidon was not a distant ruler, lost in grandeur. His presence touched the lives of mortals. Fishermen felt him in their nets, heavy with silver scales, blessings drawn from the deep. Farmers prayed for his waters in the form of rain, for he too was keeper of flowing rivers. And sailors, above all, trusted him with their lives, believing his gaze followed every voyage. He was a god both fierce and tender, embodying the shifting moods of the very sea he ruled. One day, calm and steady, guiding ships through gentle tides beneath the glow of stars. Another day, stormy and wild, teaching mortals that the sea was never theirs to command. Yet even in his tempests, there was meaning. For Poseidon reminded men of their place in creation. He was a force beyond possession, but never beyond reverence, a deity to be honored with care. Legends tell of his children, born of sea foam, rivers, and even mortal queens and nymphs. These offspring carried his essence, walking both among humans and the divine. Some were gentle as the tide at dawn, others as untamed as crashing waves. Together, they showed that Poseidon's legacy was as varied as the ocean itself. The trident, his sacred emblem, was no mere tool of power, but a symbol of dominion and order. With it, he stirred the waters, raised springs from stone, and opened safe paths for sailors. It was said the earth trembled when he struck the ground, for he bore the title Earth-Shaker. But this shaking was not always fury. Sometimes it was the reminder that all stood upon fragile ground. To the ancients, Poseidon was more than myth. He was a living presence in every drop of water. When they poured libations into the sea, they believed he listened, receiving their gratitude. When they left small offerings of wine or bread, it was not fear, but trust they expressed. For the god of the sea was a guardian, a bridge between mortal need and divine mystery. His story begins not in wrath or conquest, but in inheritance, duty, and sacred bond. The birth of Poseidon was not just the rise of a god, but the birth of the sea's eternal protector. Every tide, every current, every ripple was his voice, carrying the promise that he was near. And so, when sailors spoke his name, they did not call upon a stranger. They called upon family, upon the heartbeat of the ocean, upon their guardian Poseidon. From the moment of his birth, the sea was never alone, for it had found its eternal keeper. And humanity, too, found comfort in knowing the waters had a god who listened. The trident is more than a symbol of power. It is the heartbeat of Poseidon, echoing through sea and shore. Shaped with 3 prongs, it stands tall like the waves that crest and fall, eternal and unyielding. Legends say it was forged by the Cyclopes, beings of fire and craft, masters of divine creation. Gifted to Poseidon, it became his most sacred possession, carried in hand, yet dwelling in myth. With it, he could stir the waters, calling forth waves that rose like mountains upon the horizon. With it, he could calm the seas, bringing peace to sailors trembling in the grip of storms. Each prong of the trident was seen as a truth: creation, destruction, and balance in between. It was never only a weapon. It was a staff of authority, a reminder of the sea's dual nature. To sailors, the trident was hope itself, proof that someone ruled the vast and shifting waters. Its image was carved into temples, etched into coins, and whispered in the prayers of voyagers. In every harbor, the sight of a trident meant safety, a sign the god of the sea was near. The trident's touch was said to open springs, releasing clear water from the driest stone. It could shake the earth, reminding mortals that the sea and land are forever bound. It could part the waves, clearing paths for ships to travel, guiding them to distant shores. For fishermen, the trident was the net of the divine, ensuring the bounty of the ocean. For farmers, it was rain made visible, bringing life to their fields and blessing their harvest. But above all, it was the tool that connected Poseidon to the mortal heart. When storms rose suddenly, sailors imagined the trident striking the surface, stirring the sea awake. When the waters smoothed, they believed the trident had been lifted, granting them safe passage. Thus, every voyage was a dialogue between sailors and the unseen hand of Poseidon's staff. It was not fear alone that made them honor it. It was gratitude, reverence, and awe. The trident became part of their songs, its shape drawn into sails and scratched upon wood. Children carved its likeness into sand by the shore, learning young to respect the god of waves. Priests carried its image into rituals, lifting it toward the sea as an offering of devotion. Even kings bowed to its power, for without the sea their realms could not trade or thrive. The trident, like the sea, was not bound by one purpose, but held many within its form. It was a promise of protection, a reminder of danger, and a key to balance. Each prong told a story, one of bounty, one of storm, one of peace. Together, they spoke of the ocean's truth, a cycle unbroken and eternal. In myth, Poseidon never traveled without his trident, for it was part of his very being. It was as natural to him as the sea itself, inseparable, eternal, and alive with purpose. When poets described him, they always placed the trident in his grasp, shining with power. When artists painted him, they drew the trident tall, reaching skyward like a pillar of strength. Its image crossed generations, from carved stones to coins that traveled across empires. Even today, the trident remains a symbol of the sea, authority, and resilience. It endures in flags, in emblems, and in the stories still told beside the ocean's edge. For sailors, past and present, it is not only myth, but a symbol of trust in the waves. It reminds them that the sea has a guardian, and the guardian holds a staff of balance. The trident of Poseidon, born of myth and fire, endures as the eternal sign of the sea. Sailors of the ancient world lived in constant dialogue with the sea, their lives shaped by its moods and gifts. Every journey began with a ritual, small yet sacred, to seek the favor of Poseidon, lord of the waters. They poured wine into the waves, a gesture of humility, letting the sea taste what was dear to them. Some left wreaths of olive or laurel, floating gently upon the tide as whispers of respect. Others carved prayers into wooden tablets, cast into the surf to be carried toward the unseen god. For these sailors, Poseidon was not distant myth, but a presence felt in every swell and breeze. They did not see him only as power. They saw him as protector, guide, and guardian of souls. To sail without invoking his name was unthinkable, as if denying the ocean its rightful keeper. In every harbor, men stood by their ships, hands raised, calling for his blessing before departure. Their voices mingled with the gulls and the wind, carried far into the endless horizon. Families waiting on the shore also prayed, asking Poseidon to cradle their loved ones with care. Every voyage was a covenant between mortals and the god who ruled the shifting tides. At night, under the stars, sailors whispered Poseidon's name, believing he traveled with them. When fog thickened and direction was lost, they felt his unseen hand guiding their course. When storms broke suddenly, they cried to him, trusting his trident to calm the raging sea. Even in silence, they believed he listened, watching from beneath the waters, steady and eternal. The bond between sailor and sea was fragile, yet with Poseidon, it became one of trust. He was the compass beyond compass, the map beyond map, the strength beyond their own. No offering was too small, for Poseidon valued sincerity above gold or jewels. A loaf of bread, a cup of wine, a whispered promise, these were enough to reach him. To sailors, Poseidon was family, not a ruler to be feared, but a guardian to be honored. They felt his nearness in calm mornings, when the water mirrored the sky without a ripple. They felt his power in sudden gusts that filled their sails and pushed them forward. Every change in the sea's face was understood as his presence, close, watchful, unyielding. In stories told upon the decks, sailors shared how Poseidon had saved them in darkest hours. One spoke of a storm where the clouds split, revealing stars that guided them to safety. Another told of calm waters that opened in the midst of chaos, a miracle of deliverance. Such tales were not dismissed, but cherished, living proof of a god who guarded his people. Harbors themselves were seen as gifts of Poseidon, safe arms stretched wide to welcome ships. Upon arrival, sailors gave thanks, pouring libations again, for gratitude was the closing of prayer. Their devotion was not born of fear alone, but of love, respect, and shared journey. For Poseidon was not only ruler of seas, but companion of those who braved them. He walked with them in silence, unseen yet present, like a shadow of the waves themselves. Even when storms claimed ships, families still prayed, believing Poseidon had guided souls home. The god of the sea was both mystery and comfort, a paradox sailors gladly embraced. They knew the ocean could never truly be tamed, but it could be trusted in his care. And so, for every voyage, His name was the first word spoken and the last upon return. Poseidon was the guardian of sailors, not by distance but by intimacy, close as the tide. Through prayers, rituals, and whispered hopes, the bond was renewed, eternal as the sea itself. Long before charts were drawn, sailors learned to read the whispers of the sea like sacred scripture. The color of the water told them stories, shifting from green to blue, each shade a secret of depth. The flight of seabirds gave clues, their patterns tracing invisible paths toward hidden shores. Even the smell of salt and wind carried messages, warnings of storms or promises of land. Yet above all signs, it was Poseidon they trusted most, the unseen compass of their journey. When stars disappeared behind clouds, they felt his hand steadying their course through uncertainty. When waves rose higher than masts, they prayed, believing he held the balance between peril and peace. In calm seas, they whispered thanks, knowing silence too was a gift from the guardian below. Tales spread among the crews, carried from port to port, of Poseidon's gentle interventions. One spoke of nets that overflowed after prayers, the sea answering hunger with abundance. Another told of winds that arrived in perfect measure, guiding them safely to their destination. Such stories stitched faith into the fabric of daily life, uniting sailors in shared reverence. Even those who doubted found comfort in rituals, for hope itself is a form of prayer. They carved tridents on their ships, not as decoration, but as a shield against misfortune. Each mark was a promise that Poseidon's watchful eyes never strayed far from their sails. On stormy nights, captains reminded their crews that fear was human, but trust was divine. The men held ropes tighter, but also held faith, knowing the sea listened to their hearts. The ocean was vast, but they were never alone, for Poseidon walked the waves unseen. He was the silence between thunder, the calm after chaos, the anchor within their spirit. At times, sailors dreamed of him, a tall figure crowned with kelp, eyes like endless depths. In dreams, he spoke not with words, but with waves, carrying comfort through the language of water. Some awoke certain they had been visited, hearts filled with peace stronger than any storm. Such visions were not doubted but cherished, passed from one generation of sailors to the next. Grandfathers told their grandsons how Poseidon guided their ships when hope was fading. Mothers reminded their children that every prayer cast upon the sea was heard. Fishermen at dawn, sailors at dusk, all shared the same reverence for their guardian. The bond was not bound by time or distance. It was eternal, like the tides themselves. Even in ports where cultures differed, Poseidon's name found a place upon sailors' lips. He was not only a Greek god, but a universal protector, claimed by every man at sea. The ocean belongs to no one, and so too did Poseidon belong to all who sailed. He listened not to language, but to sincerity, the heartbeat within the prayer itself. Whether whispered in fear or spoken in gratitude, every word reached the deep. Every voyage carried offerings, not only of wine or bread, but of faith and humility. Sailors knew the sea gave as much as it could take, and balance lay in respect. Poseidon, to them, was the bridge between the fragile human and the infinite ocean. In his guardianship, they felt the courage to face horizons unknown and winds untamed. Every sail raised was an act of trust. Every anchor lifted a step into sacred mystery. Their lives were fragile threads, but Poseidon wove them into the vast tapestry of the sea. And as the waves rose and fell, so too did their prayers, echoing across eternity. Legends tell us that Poseidon did not only guard the seas, but shaped them with his unseen hand. He was the rhythm in the tides, the pulse of the moonlit waves, the breath of the ocean itself. To sailors, the sea was alive, its voice echoing with the spirit of their guardian beneath. They spoke of how the shores were carved by his will, cliffs rising where his trident touched. Caves deep within the rocks were said to be chambers where his whispers lingered forever. When the ocean receded, exposing hidden sands, it was believed Poseidon had walked there. Every shell, every pearl, every polished stone was thought to be a token from his realm. Sailors carried them home as charms, tiny fragments of a god's eternal generosity. The salt spray on their skin felt like his blessing, a mark of protection from the deep. In storms, they saw not only chaos, but the raw artistry of their guardian's presence. Lightning upon the waves was his voice, commanding respect from those who dared to sail. Thunder rolling over the horizon was his reminder that the sea could never be owned. Yet within that awe was always comfort, for Poseidon's power was balanced by care. He did not rule the ocean as a tyrant, but as a steward, shaping it for harmony. The currents that carried ships were seen as gifts, pathways laid down by divine design. Winds that filled sails were not accidents, but guidance from Poseidon's guiding breath. Even silence upon the sea was his voice, urging sailors to listen with their hearts. They believed every voyage followed lines written by him long before they set sail. Destiny was a chart drawn in water, invisible, yet present in every ripple and wave. When sailors reached distant shores, they gave thanks not only for safety, but for guidance. For they knew it was Poseidon who carried them, unseen yet steadfast as the tides. The sea itself was his temple, without walls or roof, yet vast enough for all. Every prayer spoken was received, carried into depths where his spirit dwelled eternal. Every offering cast upon the waters became part of that endless sacred communion. Some believed the fish that swam near their boats were messengers of Poseidon. Others saw dolphins as his companions, guardians sent to protect the weary sailor. When dolphins leapt alongside ships, men cheered, believing Poseidon smiled upon them. Even storms were reframed as lessons, moments to strengthen faith and courage at sea. For what is fear but a reminder of trust? And what is struggle but proof of hope? Poseidon was not distant in myth, but present in every wave, breaking upon the bow. He was the horizon, always waiting, the light upon water, the anchor of every heart. Legends told of times he lifted ships from rocks, guiding them back into open waters. Others spoke of whirlpools calming suddenly, as though his hand smoothed the sea. Such miracles were not doubted, but held as sacred truths, proof of his guardianship. The ocean was vast, but Poseidon gave it meaning, turning fear into reverence. Without him, the sea was only water. With him, it became a living companion. Generations of sailors passed these stories like heirlooms, treasures richer than gold. Children learned early to whisper his name when waves crashed against the shore. Fathers taught their sons that every oar stroke echoed a prayer to the guardian. Mothers told their daughters that seashells sang because Poseidon gave them voice. So the bond grew stronger, woven into culture, myth, and daily life of the sea. And still, across centuries, his presence lingers in the rhythm of the eternal tides. Poseidon, the guardian, shaped not only waters, but hearts that dared to trust the deep. In every age, sailors spoke of moments when Poseidon revealed his nearness through signs upon the sea. Sometimes it was the sudden parting of clouds, sunlight spilling like a promise onto their path. Other times it was the stillness of waters after days of turmoil, a calm beyond explanation. Such moments were not dismissed as chance, but embraced as gifts from their guardian. A captain might tell his crew that Poseidon had answered their prayers, steadying their journey. The men would nod in silence, their hearts strengthened, their fears quieted by faith. Even the youngest cabin boy learned early to recognize these blessings as sacred. When dolphins leapt near the bow, laughter erupted, for it meant Poseidon's favor. The animals were seen as messengers of joy, guiding ships with playful certainty. Whales surfacing near vessels were not danger, but reminders of the god's vast kingdom. Every creature of the sea, from the smallest fish to the greatest beast, carried his presence. Sailors understood that the ocean was his choir, each voice a note of eternal song. To listen was to learn, for Poseidon spoke not in words, but in rhythms of the deep. The tides themselves were his language, rising and falling with deliberate harmony. When the tide was high, it was said Poseidon lifted spirits toward courage. When the tide fell low, it was believed he urged reflection and humility. Seasons at sea were not marked by calendars, but by Poseidon's shifting moods. Gentle breezes were his kindness, fierce gusts his stern reminders of respect. Rainfall was received not as burden, but as blessing, cleansing sails and souls alike. Every drop that touched their faces was thought to carry a fragment of his grace. Night skies, too, bore his presence, stars guiding ships as if lit by his hand. Constellations told stories of his realm, shaping maps upon the heavens above. Sailors followed them with reverence, knowing Poseidon's watch stretched into the skies. Even silence had meaning when waves softened to whispers beneath a silver moon. In those quiet hours, men felt closest to him, their guardian resting at their side. Some claimed to hear faint music, like a hymn carried from the depths. Others swore the waves formed patterns, sacred signs traced upon the surface. Though no proof was needed, their faith grew stronger with each mysterious gift. Harbors became sanctuaries, places where gratitude was poured freely after long voyages. At arrival, men offered thanks, kneeling upon decks, heads bowed in reverence. The sea had spared them, and they knew it was Poseidon's hand that guided. Fires were lit upon shores, flames flickering as symbols of eternal devotion. Songs were sung not only of survival, but of the God who made it possible. Children danced by the water, learning early the reverence owed to the sea. Even elders, weathered by years, bowed low, their respect unshaken by time. Faith in Poseidon was not fragile, but enduring, passed like a torch across generations. And always, the stories returned to one truth. The guardian never abandoned his own. Even in trials, even in storms, even in silence, he was present. The sea might rage, but within it was always his steady spirit. For sailors, this belief was not superstition, but foundation, the anchor of their lives. Without it, the ocean was chaos. With it, the ocean was home. Every voyage, every tide, every horizon was sanctified by his unseen presence. So the sea was never feared as enemy, but honored as the dwelling of their protector. And through centuries of tales, Poseidon remained eternal, the guardian of sailors' souls. There were nights when the sea stretched endless, a mirror of stars, and sailors felt both small and eternal. In that vast silence, they believed Poseidon walked the waters, unseen yet close, like a father beside his child. Some claimed to see shapes in the moonlit waves, the faint outline of a figure crowned with seaweed. Others spoke of dreams so vivid that they awoke certain they had been touched by his presence. In those dreams, Poseidon never roared or raged, but spoke softly through images of waves and tides. He showed sailors safe harbors, calm passages and horizons waiting beyond the reach of fear. Men carried these dreams like maps within their hearts, steering their ships with new courage. Faith was not forced, but natural, born from encounters too mysterious to be denied. Each voyage became more than travel. It was a pilgrimage guided by the guardian of the deep. Even when storms shook their masts, the memory of his nearness steadied trembling hands. The youngest sailors, new to the sea, listened wide-eyed to stories told under starlight. They learned that Poseidon was not only in the grand miracles, but also in the smallest moments. The sudden calm after fear, the sight of gulls promising land, the shimmer of light on waves. All these were signs of his care, proof that no sailor was ever truly alone. Captains, hardened by years, confessed that they too leaned on these quiet assurances. No skill or strength was ever enough without trust in Poseidon's unseen guidance. This humility was what bound men together, uniting crews across language and culture. Faith in the guardian became a universal language spoken by all who braved the sea. At times, entire fleets set sail, and before departure, they offered prayers in unison. Hundreds of voices rose, mingling with wind and gulls, carried to the horizon as one. Such moments were powerful, for they reminded sailors that they shared a single protector. When disaster struck, survivors often claimed they had been spared by Poseidon's mercy. Some told of drifting for days before a sudden current carried them to shore. Others spoke of unexpected winds turning them away from rocks at the last instant. Whether true or shaped by faith, these stories became sacred treasures passed to new generations. Harbors grew rich not only in trade but in tales, each ship bringing new proof of Poseidon. Taverns echoed with voices sharing gratitude, laughter mingling with reverence for the sea. Children sat close, listening to these stories, learning the rhythm of faith as naturally as breathing. For them, Poseidon was not a distant myth, but a companion who shaped their world. Every net cast into water, every sail raised into wind, was an act of trust. And when journeys ended, men often returned with offerings, gifts of thanks to the sea. They left coins in the surf, flowers upon the tide, prayers whispered into the breeze. Such gestures reminded them that voyages were not theirs alone, but shared with their guardian. In the quiet of dawn, as the first light touched the waters, sailors felt his nearness most. It was as though Poseidon himself lifted the sun from the horizon, blessing the new day. And as shadows faded, men prepared once more to face the ocean with steady hearts. For they knew that whatever awaited, their guardian was with them, unseen yet eternal. This bond was not fear nor obligation, but love woven through waves and tides. It was a love strong enough to outlast storms, strong enough to endure centuries. And so the sailors of old lived and died with the same belief. Poseidon was near, not as myth, not as legend alone, but as guardian, eternal as the sea itself. There were legends of islands hidden beyond maps, places said to be touched by Poseidon's own hand. Sailors whispered of shores where the sand shimmered like crushed pearls beneath the rising sun. These islands were not marked on charts, yet many claimed to have glimpsed them during long voyages. Some said they appeared only to those who showed reverence to the sea and its guardian. Others believed they were rewards for courage, gifts from Poseidon to weary hearts seeking rest. One tale spoke of a small crew who drifted far after storms tore their sails in hope. For days they endured hunger, their eyes fixed on horizons that promised only endless water. Then, one night, under a sky of stars, a soft glow appeared on the waves. By dawn, they found an island blooming with fruit, streams of clear water running freely. They wept as they drank, believing Poseidon himself had led them to this sanctuary. When they returned home, they told of paradise, yet no map could guide others there. It was said the island sank beneath the sea, hidden once more by the god. Such stories were not dismissed as fantasy, but embraced as truth wrapped in mystery. For sailors, the sea itself was a shifting world, full of secrets revealed only in trust. Not all islands held wonders, yet each encounter carried signs of Poseidon's guiding hand. A sudden safe harbor, a stretch of calm waters, or the song of birds promising land. Every gift of the sea was sacred, whether grand or humble, for it came from him. Harbors echoed with tales of these blessings, passed from weathered lips to eager listeners. Young men heard and felt awe, longing for voyages where they too might glimpse miracles. Women by the shore listened, hearts swelling with gratitude that the god guarded their kin. Communities thrived not by trade alone, but by shared faith in Poseidon's presence. Festivals were held each season, offerings laid at the water's edge in shimmering devotion. Fruits, flowers, and crafted shells were set afloat, carried gently by the tide. Songs rose in chorus, voices blending with the crash of waves in timeless harmony. Children danced barefoot on the sand, learning early the bond between their lives and the sea. Fishermen bowed low, casting nets only after prayers, never taking without reverence. They believed each catch was a gift, each wave a reminder of Poseidon's watchful gaze. Sailors returning from long journeys knelt, pressing their foreheads to the earth in thanks. Their families wept in joy, embracing them as though Poseidon himself had returned them home. Even storms that scarred coasts were met with humility, seen as reminders of his power. No anger lingered, for the sea was never enemy, always teacher, always guardian. Legends of islands, hidden and revealed, reminded them that Poseidon's world was vast. His realm was not bound by shores, but stretched wherever waves touched sand. Every voyage, every prayer, every tale deepened the belief that he was eternal. And though maps could not capture his mysteries, hearts carried them through generations. Sailors knew they walked in a story larger than themselves, written by the sea. Poseidon was both author and guardian, shaping lives with hands unseen yet undeniable. And so, the legends grew, woven into songs, carved into memory, told beneath starlit skies. Each story ended the same way, with gratitude for the god who never abandoned. For sailors, faith was not a burden, but a light, guiding across endless horizons. And in that light, Poseidon's promise remained unbroken, eternal as the waves themselves. There were legends of islands hidden beyond maps, places said to be touched by Poseidon's own hand. Sailors whispered of shores where the sand shimmered like crushed pearls beneath the rising sun. These islands were not marked on charts, yet many claimed to have glimpsed them during long voyages. Some said they appeared only to those who showed reverence to the sea and its guardian. Others believed they were rewards for courage, gifts from Poseidon to weary hearts seeking rest. One tale spoke of a small crew who drifted far after storms tore their sails in hope. For days they endured hunger, their eyes fixed on horizons that promised only endless water. Then, one night, under a sky of stars, a soft glow appeared on the waves. By dawn, they found an island blooming with fruit, streams of clear water running freely. They wept as they drank, believing Poseidon himself had led them to this sanctuary. When they returned home, they told of paradise, yet no map could guide others there. It was said the island sank beneath the sea, hidden once more by the god. Such stories were not dismissed as fantasy, but embraced as truth wrapped in mystery. For sailors, The sea itself was a shifting world, full of secrets revealed only in trust. Not all islands held wonders, yet each encounter carried signs of Poseidon's guiding hand. A sudden safe harbor, a stretch of calm waters, or the song of birds promising land. Every gift of the sea was sacred, whether grand or humble, for it came from him. Harbors echoed with tales of these blessings, passed from weathered lips to eager listeners. Young men heard and felt awe, longing for voyages where they too might glimpse miracles. Women by the shore listened, hearts swelling with gratitude that the god guarded their kin. Communities thrived not by trade alone, but by shared faith in Poseidon's presence. Festivals were held each season, offerings laid at the water's edge in shimmering devotion. Fruits, flowers, and crafted shells were set afloat, carried gently by the tide. Songs rose in chorus, voices blending with the crash of waves in timeless harmony. Children danced barefoot on the sand, learning early the bond between their lives and the sea. Fishermen bowed low, casting nets only after prayers, never taking without reverence. They believed each catch was a gift, each wave a reminder of Poseidon's watchful gaze. Sailors returning from long journeys knelt, pressing their foreheads to the earth in thanks. Their families wept in joy, embracing them as though Poseidon himself had returned them home. Even storms that scarred coasts were met with humility, seen as reminders of his power. No anger lingered, for the sea was never enemy, always teacher, always guardian. Legends of islands hidden and revealed reminded them that Poseidon's world was vast. His realm was not bound by shores, but stretched wherever waves touched sand. Every voyage, every prayer, every tale deepened the belief that he was eternal. And though maps could not capture his mysteries, hearts carried them through generations. Sailors knew they walked in a story larger than themselves, written by the sea. Poseidon was both author and guardian, shaping lives with hands unseen yet undeniable. And so, the legends grew, woven into songs, carved into memory, told beneath starlit skies. Each story ended the same way, with gratitude for the god who never abandoned. For sailors, faith was not a burden, but a light, guiding across endless horizons. And in that light, Poseidon's promise remained unbroken, eternal as the waves themselves. As the final chapter of these tales draws near, the sea itself seems to whisper a farewell. Waves lap gently upon the shore, as though carrying memories of sailors long gone. Each crest and fall of water is a heartbeat, steady and eternal, echoing Poseidon's promise. For centuries, men have looked to the horizon with both fear and hope in their eyes. They left behind families, homes, and comfort, trusting the guardian of the sea to guide them. And though many journeys were hard, none were truly walked alone, for Poseidon was near. His presence was not only in miracles, but in every breath of wind and tide. The laughter of dolphins, the cry of gulls, the glow of stars, each was a sign. Through storms and calm, silence and song, the guardian's hand held steady over his children. Sailors spoke of him not with dread, but with love, as of a father eternal. Generations passed, yet faith endured, woven into prayers whispered at every shore. Fathers taught sons to bow before the sea. Mothers told daughters of his mercy. Communities gathered in festivals, their voices lifted like waves, praising the unseen protector. Even in distant lands, where seas touched foreign sands, his stories traveled and grew. The name Poseidon became not myth but memory, alive in every heart that braved the ocean. And though the world changed, though sails gave way to engines, faith did not vanish. Modern sailors still stand at the rail, gazing into endless blue, whispering his name. They may call it tradition, but deep within, it is trust, unbroken across centuries. The sea has no master but him, no guardian but the eternal one of tides. Every voyage, from smallest fishing trip to grandest expedition, is touched by his spirit. When men return safe, gratitude rises. When they are lost, their names join the waves. For in Poseidon's realm, no soul is forgotten, each carried into his vast embrace. He is the keeper of stories, the guardian of courage, the father of the sea. And so, as our tale ends, it does not truly close, for the ocean never ends. It continues beyond horizon, beyond memory, beyond time, where Poseidon forever reigns. The voices of sailors still echo, their songs rising on winds, carried across endless waters. Each story, each prayer, each whispered word is a thread woven into the sea's fabric. The guardian listens still. His presence is near now as in the first age of sails. So when you stand by the water, listening to waves, remember the promise within them. They are not only sounds of nature, but whispers of a God who keeps watch. Each ripple carries memory, each tide carries faith, each wave carries a blessing unseen. Poseidon, guardian of sailors, endures, eternal as the sea he calls his own. And in that eternity lies comfort, for none who love the ocean sail alone. His hand is steady, his heart vast, his presence woven through every shore and tide. As long as waves kiss the earth, his guardianship will remain unbroken, steadfast, true. So let the final words be not of ending, but of continuation, a song unceasing. The sea breathes, the sailors sail, and Poseidon watches, eternal guardian of the deep. Thus, the story does not end. It flows like water, endless, boundless, everlasting. And you too are part of it, whenever you gaze into the ocean's eternal blue.